My name is Emma. I just turned 30 the other day. Today, I want to share with you the story of the great turnaround in my life. I have an older brother who is 2 years my senior. His name is David. Ever since we were kids, David had what you might call a finished face, sharp features that made him the talk of the neighborhood. With rumors that he might be scouted by some talent agency. He was the so-called handsome guy. He was charming, smart, and quick-witted for a child. Our parents and the adults around us adored him. On the other hand, ever since kindergarten, I was the only one in my family with a chubby figure. My features were similar to David's, but being chubby, my appeal was greatly diminished. I was shy and lacked charm. Being not much of a talker, I never had the chance to be called smart like David. I was aware, even as a child, that people around us referred to my brother and me as complete opposites. I guess this talk reached our parents' ears too. By the time I entered elementary school, it seemed like my parents had lost interest in me. My grades on school tests were lower compared to when David was my age, and I remained chubby. David got snacks at 3 p.m., but I didn't. Yet, for some reason, I remained chubby. I remember my mother laughing and saying, "Really, you're so round and ball-like." As a child, I didn't quite understand and felt somewhat happy when she laughed, but now I realize I was just being made fun of. David got new clothes and shoes for various reasons, his birthday, scoring a goal in soccer club, and so on. In contrast, even though I was a girl, I only had hand-me-downs from David, even his shoes. I can't remember how many times I fell because the shoes didn't fit. The only thing that was truly mine was the backpack given to me by my grandparents before they passed away. It was my treasure. After a while, David graduated from elementary school and went on to a private middle school. He was accepted into a well-known school for his academic excellence, and our parents were overjoyed. Around this time, David, with his cute celebrity-like features, received offers to be a kid's model. As a result, my parents, especially my mother, frequently walked him down prominent streets like Rodeo Drive to show him off. It was like she was saying, "Look how cute my son is." Meanwhile, I never went out with my mother. Maybe I did when I was a baby, but I don't recall any such times after I became aware. Once, David said, "Next time, let's take Emma too." I think he realized, even as a kid, that I was being neglected by our parents. But my mother blatantly disapproved and just replied, "Maybe someday." David's considerate words didn't make me happy, instead, they only made me feel more miserable. Years later, I became a middle school student too. Unlike David, I went to a regular public middle school. It seemed like our parents had no expectations for me and had no intention of letting me take entrance exams. My father even declared, "I can't spend money on you." I didn't necessarily want to go to a private school, but being told such things from the start made me feel like my life was being closed off. When I was younger, I vaguely thought, is this just how it is with siblings? I didn't know any different. The abnormality of our family life was normal for me since that's all I knew when I became conscious. During this time, entering adolescence, I finally began to wonder, why am I the only one treated differently? But the way my parents treated me only got worse. My mother, a stay-at-home mom with plenty of time, would leave me with household chores and shopping and go out with her friends. My father, on his part, would scold me when I wanted to go out with friends, asking, "Who's going to do the chores?" David always cared for me, helping out and even arguing with our parents on my behalf. But they never listened to him when it came to how they treated me. As time went on, David got busy with high school entrance exams and then attending one of the top high schools in the county, leaving him little time to think about home or me. And that's when I really began to understand what hell was. It started with the parent-teacher meeting no-show incident. In any other family, parents missing a parent-teacher meeting would be a big deal. But for our parents, it was more like, "We're not going, so what?" It wouldn't even qualify as an incident. During my 3 years in middle school, they only attended the conference once, when I was in the first year. They didn't come in my second year, nor during the crucial third year when I was preparing for exams. My teacher, Mr. Smith, expressed concern, asking if something was happening at home, but I just brushed it off. I knew my situation wasn't normal, but it wasn't like I was being physically abused by my parents. I didn't know how to express this mental agony I was enduring. Talking about it felt somehow embarrassing. It was like confessing, I'm a child who isn't cherished by my parents. But the incidents continued. Next was the New Year's left behind incident. That year, at the end of December, my parents took David and went to visit my mother's family, leaving me behind. Until the previous year, I had always gone with them, but this time they said, "You're a student, stay home and study." It was probably just an excuse because they found me annoying. So, I ended up spending New Year's Eve alone. I couldn't bring myself to ask friends to hang out on such a day, not wanting to admit that I'm a lonely child left behind by my family. So, I stayed home alone. I watched the music awards and countdown shows by myself, shedding a few tears before falling asleep. The next morning, the doorbell rang incessantly, waking me up. I thought it was too early for my family to return, so I hesitantly checked the intercom to see who it was. There stood my maternal uncle Kevin and his wife Susan. Shocked, I rushed to the door with my untidy hair and asked, "What's going on?" Uncle Kevin said, "Emma, let's leave this house. We've already spoken to your mother and have her permission. We'll handle the paperwork later. So don't worry." Confused, I asked, "What do you mean, Uncle Kevin? Leave the house?" His demeanor unsettled me. What did he mean by leaving the house? Aunt Susan said, "Emma, if you don't mind, we'd like you to become our child. We've always thought of you as our daughter since you were born, especially since we couldn't have children." I was speechless. Indeed, my aunt and uncle, who couldn't have children, had always doted on me during visits. They had often criticized my parents' attitude towards me. It was Aunt Susan who played with me when I was left alone while my parents only paid attention to David. And Uncle Kevin who bought me snacks and cute clothes. I have far more fond memories with them than with my own parents. Uncle Kevin, who had just been with my parents, told me this. "Your parents, they're planning not to let you go to high school. They want to make you work as soon as you turn 16 to save money for David's college. We can't just stand by and let this happen. You have the right to go to school and shouldn't have to grind away your life for the family." I stood there in shock. Could this be what being dumbfounded feels like? My parents were willing to sacrifice my future for David's. That's why they hadn't attended any parent-teacher meetings in years. They had no interest in my dreams or aspirations. In their eyes, my life was planned out as a workhorse. As I crumbled to the ground, my uncle and aunt knelt beside me, comforting me. "We're not your real parents, and you might feel awkward with us, but we promise to make you happy," Aunt Susan said, her eyes brimming with tears, hugging me as if overcome with emotion. "You have the right to be happy. We should have come to get you sooner. If you don't mind, we want you to become our daughter." Uncle Kevin said this to me, his eyes red, looking straight at me. I wondered, had I ever been wanted like this by an adult since I was born? It had only been a little over a decade since my birth. The choice of what to do next was clear to me. I decided to become the adopted child of my aunt and uncle. 10 years have passed since then. Since they took me in, my aunt and uncle showered me with so much love and gave me countless joyful experiences. Aunt Susan enjoyed picking out clothes for me and took me shopping on weekends, while Uncle Kevin, who had always wanted to drink with his daughter, prepared a bottle of wine from the year I was born for my 21st birthday. We went on trips together, and my somewhat childlike uncle even took me to zoos and aquariums when I was in high school. These are unforgettable, priceless memories I never had with my real parents. Initially, I still saw them as my uncle and a aunt, but gradually, I came to think of them as nothing but my parents. Now, I call them a dad and a mom. I heard that when my parents visited their hometown, my mother drunkenly said to my aunt and uncle, "Emma is hopeless in everything. Lacks charm, and her looks are a bit off, don't you think? She doesn't have that spark. And she's not smart either. Honestly, I don't need a stupid daughter like her, we have our excellent eldest son." My aunt and uncle were furious at these words, but my parents were unapologetic and even declared, "We won't let her go to high school." That's when the adoption discussion started. I'm truly grateful that Aunt Susan, who wasn't drinking that New Year's Eve, drove all the way to get me. I want to repay my dear parents, who mean so much to me. I wanted to become a daughter they could be proud of, so I studied hard in high school. I couldn't focus much during my high school entrance exams due to everything happening. That's why, once in high school, I decided to create a future my aunt and uncle wouldn't be ashamed of and set new goals. My efforts paid off, and I got into a prestigious national university. But that wasn't enough to show my gratitude to my aunt and uncle, now my dear parents. I wanted to give them a comfortable life in the future. With that determination, I continued to study hard in university, got my meteorologist certification. And now I'm even appearing on TV as a meteorologist. Furthermore, wanting to make my parents proud, I worked hard on diet and exercise, and now I'm known as the beautiful meteorologist. Looking back, I always had the elements to become beautiful, having resembled my brother in facial features. My aunt and uncle used to say, "We're proud of you no matter what," but now I feel I've truly become a daughter they can boast about. There's still so much I want to give back and so many thanks I want to express. Just when I was thinking this, my biological parents suddenly appeared before me. "Emma, oh, you've grown so much. You've become such a fine young lady." My parents, tears in their eyes, clung to me. I was leaving the TV station and about to get into my car when they unexpectedly showed up, leaving me unable to comprehend the situation. Honestly, it had been so long that I didn't recognize them at first. David said, "That's Emma on TV. I was surprised to see you've become such a beauty, and a meteorologist." "That's amazing." My father patted my shoulder as if to say, "That's my daughter. Really, you are truly our daughter, we're so proud." They actually said it. I couldn't hide the disgust on my face and glared at my parents. They seemed unfazed and kept pushing the conversation. Since we've finally met, let's go to the restaurant up ahead for a meal. You must be earning well as a meteorologist, right?" After all, what were they planning, ambushing me like stalkers? Asking if I earn a lot after suggesting a meal at a fancy restaurant made it clear they were just looking to take advantage of me. I won't let them leech off me, I need to send them away so they never want to meet me again. That's when a plan formed in my mind. This is a perfect opportunity. "Mom, Dad, I'm happy to see you. But I have another job today, so I can't go out to eat with you, sorry." Of course, there's no other job. The only plan I have is to give a fancy restaurant meal to my beloved aunt and uncle as an anniversary gift. Oh, that's too bad. I didn't miss the momentary clucking of my mother's tongue. "Would you mind giving me your contact information? I'm having a small party for my birthday with some people from the TV station. It's not big, but there will be lots of delicious food, and it's going to be fancy. I'd love to invite you too." When I suggested this, my parents' eyes visibly lit up. "Really? That's great. Actors from the TV station will be there, won't they?" "Don't be silly, Dad, of course they'll be there." My parents were beaming with excitement. "Actors? As if. It's a small party for meteorologists, after all. Mainly newspaper and TV station staff. At best, some announcers and MCs will be the most glamorous guests." I smiled back at my parents' expectant faces and left with a "see you at the party." A month later, as planned, I rented a venue for my birthday party. It was a small event, but a considerable number of people gathered. My parents arrived, waving their hands and calling, "Emma." As if to say, "Look, we are this child's parents." It's really annoying. "Mom, Dad, welcome. Could you go to the dressing room right away? They'll do everything from your outfit to your makeup. The clothes you're wearing are nice, but they have brand clothes for rent there, so take this chance to enjoy the atmosphere." They were all smiles at my suggestion. So transparent. Completely overjoyed and showing off. Oh, I rarely get to wear brand clothes. I wonder if they'll suit me. You've put on a bit of weight. Stop it. I complimented them, saying, "You both are still young and beautiful, so anything will suit you." They nodded as if they had been waiting for those words. As a child, I couldn't understand my parents, always afraid of being disliked even more. But now, seeing them like this, they seem quite simple. They are the type of people who wag their tails at anything high-end, powerful, or beautiful. After getting their hair and makeup done, my parents returned to the party room, visibly delighted. My mother wore a light pink, shoulder-bearing miniskirt dress, the kind usually worn by younger people. It resulted in an appearance that was utterly nonsensical for her age. The sagging skin on her knees betrayed her age, impossible to hide. Dad chose a loud yellow and green geometric patterned tie with a bright red suit. In fact, he was the only one at the venue wearing such a flashy suit. Even for a casual dress code party, no one else would choose such a tasteless combination. The clothes, indeed brand name, were acquired from a second-hand shop. In fact, I had arranged everything. I told the makeup and wardrobe people, my parents are coming today, so please dress them in these. These are memorable outfits from when I was little, and we went to a family party. Of course, I have no such memory of going to a party with these parents. A little white lie. My parents, believing the outfits to be brand new, seemed quite pleased when I repeatedly assured them that they looked fitting. They are flashy, but if you say so, then it must be all right. They seemed to think. Once, my parents listened to everything my accomplished brother said, except when it concerned me. Now, their attention is directed towards me, their accomplished daughter. After a while, the party started, and as a party host, it was my turn to give a speech. Before going up on stage, I squeezed my parents' hands and said, I have a message for you two today, so listen closely, okay? My parents were surprised, what, and looked happily at me as I went up to the stage. Thank you all for coming to my birthday party. I want to take this moment to thank everyone who planned this party. My words prompted playful teasing from my friends, you're being too formal. You're not usually like that. Hearing this, I turned towards my parents jokingly and said, as usual. Today, my parents are here too, they are over there, I said, gesturing in their direction. And the lighting technician cleverly spotlighted them. Those are the parents who abandoned me in my teens, yet ambushed me after seeing me on TV, shamelessly trying to reconnect. The room buzzed with whispers at my statement. It's no wonder, as I hadn't shared much of my past with anyone except close friends. What are you saying, Emma? My mother stood up, and my father looked stunned. Those two compared me unfavorably to my talented brother since I was in kindergarten, oppressing only me. I didn't get snacks, only hand-me-downs from my brother. Even being treated like that, as a young child. I loved my parents because that's all a child knows. But in middle school, they pushed all the household chores onto me and even said they wouldn't let me go to high school. They never came to parent-teacher meetings. And then my aunt and uncle, worried about me, adopted me as their daughter. I'm usually very cheerful, if I do say so myself. That's because my aunt and uncle took me in and continually showed me with love that I wasn't a worthless child. Gaining confidence and overcoming my shyness, I was able to transform into a bright personality. So, my backstory came as quite a shock to the people at the party. Suddenly, I heard voices condemning my parents, that's awful, to come to your daughter's birthday dressed like that. My parents, unable to withstand the stares, hung their heads and trembled. But now, I'm thankful to those two. Because of them, I was blessed with my aunt and uncle, my truly dear parents. And I learned the warmth of a family. At these words, my parents looked at me as if to say, does this mean we're still important to you? I quietly smiled back at them. Max from Daily News, are you here? Please turn this story and the photos into an article. Consider it my birthday present. I called out to my acquaintance from the magazine, who had already taken photos of my parents. Wait, stop. Don't do it. Don't take pictures. My parents panicked, desperately trying to hide their faces. No decency even in the end. I shouted at them. When I was a child, no matter how much I pleaded to stop, you forced me to do things. You can't expect to get away with it now after doing that to me. My mother was teary-eyed at my rebuke. Please, I will apologize to you. If it gets published, both of us will be blamed. You wouldn't want that for your parents. Would you? I was astounded at her audacity. Do you really think I still consider you as my parents? You never raised me properly, abandoning all your responsibilities as parents. My parents are my aunt and uncle, they are the only ones who are truly my mom and dad. Don't ever involve yourselves in my life again. Before I knew it, tears filled my eyes as I recalled everything and my gratitude towards my aunt and uncle. Witnessing this, guests at the party forcibly escorted my parents out of the venue. It's over, truly this time. I have completely cut ties with those people. When I was a child, I cut ties with my family under the protection of my aunt and uncle. But this time, I was able to distance myself from those people with my own strength. I feel a sense of accomplishment and gratitude towards my aunt and uncle, and even though I'm teary-eyed at how much I've grown, I'm feeling incredibly refreshed right now. Afterward, when the magazine editor asked me, "Are you sure about this?" I said please do it, and they published an article about my upbringing. It was quite sensational, covered by various programs, and while there were concerns about my image being tarnished, most of the articles and news were favorable, saying things like the comeback story of a girl cornered, approaching a modern-day Cinderella, and my popularity soared. On the other hand, my so-called parents, whom I reluctantly call that, faced scorn from neighbors and had to move out of their house after my article was published. The rumor quickly spread at my father's workplace, and he was pushed into retirement. My mother, being a housewife, meant they were both unemployed, and they had to dip into their savings to get by, as my brother informed me. Yes, even after I was sent to live with my adopted family, my brother was the only one who worried about me and would visit me at my aunt and uncle's place. At first, he said he wanted to live together again, but soon he was happy that it was the right choice for me to be adopted. Realizing, this home is better for Emma. He was my beloved brother who even helped me with my studies during my college days. After I told everything to the magazine, my brother also decided to cut ties with our parents, essentially disowning them. He joked, maybe the next time I'll see our parents will be at a funeral, but knowing him, he probably wouldn't even attend. 5 years have passed since then. I married Max, who helped me publish that article in the magazine. We've had children safely, and now I'm a mother of twin boy and girl. As a mother, I want to make sure my children grow up without favoritism, living freely and happily. Just like how my aunt and uncle showered me with unconditional love. And like how my brother always watched over me, even from afar. To raise them to be kind to everyone, just like them. But I still have other things to do besides parenting. Yes, it's repaying my debt of gratitude to my aunt and uncle. This year again, I gifted a trip for our wedding anniversary, traveling to Alaska with my husband, children, and aunt and uncle. My aunt and uncle keep saying, "Emma, you have your own family now, you don't need to do this," but repaying them is also a pleasure for me. It's not an obligation, I do it because I want to see the joy on their faces. It's kind of my life's joy. I joke, don't take away my fun, as I'm already planning what to do next. Maybe next time, a stay at a luxurious hotel with everyone would be nice. There's still so much I want to do with my family. My name is Sarah. I'm 26 years old and work in sales administration. I've been married to my husband, Kyle, for 2 years, and we're currently expecting our first child. Looks like my sister, Emily, is also pregnant. Our kids will be in the same grade. I can already see Mom's happy face, my husband joyfully says. I sometimes think he's a bit of a mama's boy. Well, my mother-in-law is quite warm and gentle, so I understand his fondness for her. Since my sister-in-law and her husband live with my in-laws, there's some distance between us, and so far, it hasn't been a problem. Or so I thought as I dreamed of a smooth-sailing life. At 9 months pregnant, my baby was diagnosed as breech, and considering the risks, I was advised to have a C-section. The thought of being cut open terrified me, but after Dr. Johnson explained the dangers of delivering a breech baby, I decided to go through with the C-section if the baby didn't turn around. I'm sure my husband feels the same way. So, before the chaos of hospitalization, we went to the hospital together. And I was surprised by his reaction when we were about to sign the consent form. A C-section? Really? Kyle turned to Dr. Johnson with a look of displeasure. Dr. Johnson, who had explained the situation politely, seemed perplexed. Why does it have to be like this? Well, because the baby is breech. It's dangerous to deliver normally. But dangerous. Isn't that just an excuse? C-section is quicker than normal delivery, right? You just want to take the easy way out. Don't be so lazy, he scoffed. My husband laughed through his nose, mocking me. To think he accused me of being pampered. How could he even think to say such a thing? What do you mean by that? Well, it's true. You're already deciding on a C-section even though the baby might still turn. That's just running away, he argued. But that's not the point. Illness starts in the mind, they say. By talking about a what-ifs now, you're just making it impossible for the baby to turn. Don't you get that? He said, sighing as if talking to a naive child. Sir, please consider your wife's feelings. She needs to prepare mentally for what's ahead, Dr. Johnson tried to reason. Kyle's expression remained unimpressed. It's easy for you to say. If she goes through with this, it's me who'll be embarrassed, not you. I'm her husband, he retorted. What? How can you say that to Dr. Johnson? He snapped back, it's because of something wrong with your body that the baby is breech. And now you're getting angry about it? Can't you just give birth normally like everyone else? What does he mean by normally? I was stunned by his words. Isn't it normal for parents to want their child to be born healthy and safe? If you're really going through with this C-section, consider it as grounds for divorce, he said, pushing the consent form back. Not even saying goodbye to Dr. Johnson as he left. I don't think C-section is something to be ashamed of. I've heard that 1 in 4 women give birth by it. It's my husband's outdated views that are the problem. I tried to explain it to him several times. But he kept saying things like, kids born by C-section miss out on the tough journey, so they become wimps. Or you only truly feel love when you endure the pain of childbirth. You won't be a proper mother. His prejudices were just too irrational. The baby remained breech until the 10th month of pregnancy. I can't wait any longer. Sign the consent form, I urged. What? If you do, we're getting a divorce, he threatened. He thought I would back down at the mention of divorce, but I had already made up my mind. A man who can't prioritize the safety of his child has no right to be a father. I snatched the consent form and told him to divorce. Fine, let's get divorced then. My ex-husband, wide-eyed at my sudden words, muttered, "You're going to regret this," as he agreed. On my way back to my parents' house, I called them about the divorce. My parents seemed surprised to see me return so suddenly, but they comforted me after hearing the story. The next day, feeling a bit down about having to discuss alimony and child support later, I received a call from my ex-husband. I ignored it a few times, but eventually answered due to the persistent ringing. He sounded almost tearful, saying, "Help me." It was strange that he was reaching out so soon. When I listened, he explained that he had been attacked by sudden, excruciating pain since the morning, thinking he was dying. He groaned with stabbing pain, made a mess diving onto the dining table, and couldn't find any painkillers. He even cursed my absence. But eventually, he couldn't endure it anymore and called an ambulance himself. At the hospital, he was diagnosed with kidney stones and prescribed pain medication. He said he was now home, discussing hospitalization options with his family. Oh, really? I couldn't help but feel cold about it, thinking if the painkillers were working, he should be able to manage. Kidney stones usually pass naturally, right? My father had the same diagnosis before, and he naturally passed the stones after being prescribed painkillers and medication. Well, that's possible, but... My ex-husband's response was hesitant. The stone they found must have been relatively small. In that case, medication and observation would be possible. It hurt unbelievably. If I had surgery, they'd just break it up with a laser, and it would be over quickly. I can't stand going through that again. That's just running away, I said, echoing a phrase I had heard before. What? Don't look for the easy way out. Endure it. It might pass naturally. And what if it doesn't? Don't talk about what ifs. Illness starts in the mind, right? If you don't believe it won't happen, I replied. I couldn't help but laugh. My ex-husband fell silent and hung up the phone. Sometime later, I gave birth to a lovely baby boy. His name is Ethan. I felt relieved to have chosen a C-section when I heard his umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck. I hadn't heard from my ex-husband, but one day, my former mother-in-law called. Sarah, I heard from Kyle that you're separated now? Her tone was not accusing, but rather worried. Apparently, my ex-husband had relied entirely on his mother for hospital preparations and all the arrangements. When she entered the house with a key he gave her, she screamed, thinking burglars had been there, due to the mess. Kyle won't explain anything clearly. He just keeps insisting that it's all Sarah's fault for leaving, she said. I explained the situation to her. The prejudice against C-section, the slander towards me, and why I had to go back to my parents for the birth. When I mentioned I had filed the divorce papers, she seemed lost for words. I was nervous about what she might say next, but then she said, "I'm so glad the baby was born safely. It's all thanks to you, Sarah. Thank you so much." She didn't bring up my ex-husband's mistakes, and I chose not to mention them either. Would you mind if I meet Ethan? I would come to you, but Emily is about to give birth, and I can't leave. It's my first grandson, after all. Is that okay? Feeling a bit overwhelmed by her earnest request, I nodded. When Ethan and I visited my former in-law's house, my former mother-in-law greeted us with a beaming smile. My former father-in-law, a large man, peeked out from behind. "Welcome, Sarah. And this must be Ethan. What a cutie." "Right. Yes, come on in," he said, blushing and inviting us inside. The living room I was led into had a warm and friendly atmosphere. But then, someone emerged from the back, completely ruining that mood. "Hey, Sarah. How dare you show your face here so brazenly?" It was my ex-husband, whom I hadn't seen in a long time. Was I tricked into coming here? I glanced at my former mother-in-law, but she said nothing. "You dumped all the hospital care on Mom and completely neglected the housekeeping. And you still call yourself a wife? You ran back to your parents, but just because you had a child, it doesn't make everything okay. Just because I had a child. You look so nonchalant. You went through with the C-section after all, even though I strongly opposed it. You just took the easy way out. If the kid turns out spineless, it's on you. You're a disgrace as a wife." His words were as outrageous as ever. "Sorry to burst your bubble, but I'm not your wife anymore. I filed for divorce the day I left." "What? Don't mess with me, I won't accept this." Just as my ex-husband raised his fist and yelled, a calm voice from my former mother-in-law said, "Enough of this." In a suddenly gentle tone, my ex-husband said, "Of course, Mom, you're right. She's just a failure of a woman." My former mother-in-law, squinting her eyes as if to say, "Don't say another word," sharply retorted. "I told you, Kyle. Apologize to Sarah. I'll only accept an apology from you." Her calm tone surprised even me. Mom." My ex-husband was flustered. "Sarah, I'm truly sorry. I failed in my upbringing. I was foolish, not believing everything was true. I apologize." My former mother-in-law said quietly, bowing her head. So, she wanted to see her son's true colors. "It's not your fault, Mom." As my ex-husband tried to continue, she shot him a cold glare. "You said that since C-section don't involve the pain of childbirth, the mother won't feel love for the child. Well, it's true, isn't it? If they come out easily. How can you think that being cut open doesn't involve pain? Childbirth doesn't end at birth. From that moment, you start raising them with all your might. The wound on the stomach hurts, throbs. Just smiling at the cuteness of your child can cause sharp pain. You endure the pain because you love them and want to raise them." Her words conveyed sympathy towards me. "But, it must hurt, right? But then what about the child? If they come out so easily, they'll miss out on life's trials and become spineless. Listen, Kyle. Even if a child's character is affected, it's secondary to their life, right? That's what I told my mother-in-law." You and Emily were both born by C-section, she said with a faint smile. My ex-husband was stunned and frozen. Shocked? "Well, it's a pity to think your mother was a failure. But the spineless one you're talking about is you." Distraught and holding his head, my ex-husband looked at me when she said, "I was surprised to hear the story from Sarah." "Sarah. It's your fault. Because you went for a C-section, all this happened. As my ex-husband raised his hand at me, my former father-in-law stepped in, preventing any harm. My former mother-in-law, looking down at my ex-husband on the floor, said, "Emily is likely to have a C-section for her next child too. Having a brother like you is a bad influence." Emily too. Apparently surprised, possibly due to his sister complex, my ex-husband turned pale. A husband who can't respect women is truly worthless. She snapped and then, as if to say this conversation is over, signaled to my former father-in-law with her eyes. He silently grabbed my ex-husband's arm and dragged the screaming man to the front door. Unable to resist his large father, my ex-husband was thrown out of the house. A husband who doesn't cherish his wife is really the worst. My former mother-in-law smiled sweetly. It was her usual, charming smile. The financial arrangements for the divorce were all handled by my former mother-in-law with the satisfactory result of receiving plenty of alimony and assurances that child support would be paid. "Would it be okay to see Ethan sometimes?" she asked. Realizing her intentions, yet having become friends with Emily, I replied, "Of course." My ex-husband's disownment hadn't been lifted. After announcing our divorce at work and foolishly revealing the outdated reason, he became a pariah among the women and finally realized the disconnect between his views and society's. Honestly, I was astounded that he hadn't realized it even after what his mother said. Constantly pestered by my ex-husband for a reconciliation, I offered him just one piece of advice. Kidney stones can recur, you know. I advised him to watch his diet and then sent that text before blocking him. I couldn't help but laugh, thinking this topic would be a hot conversation piece for a while.